This is the Brane X. It's a durable, portable smart speaker with a built-in battery. But what makes this speaker very special is that it has a proprietary downward-firing subwoofer that allows this tiny speaker to put out a ton of bass. This little guy has more kick in its bass than either the JBL Boombox 3 or the Sony ULT Field 7, which are 3 times as large. So today we are going to check out the Brane X and we're going to see how it compares to both the JBL Boombox 3 and the Sony ULT Field 7, because the Brane X is genuinely super impressive for its size. So first, I want to thank Brane for sponsoring this video. Now, even though Brane is sponsoring this video, they are literally letting me do whatever I want, which is super cool of them. Now, the Brane X has a retail price of $499, but they're currently running a Prime Day special and they're offering you a 15% off discount. So if you want to pick this speaker up, it'll be linked down below. And honestly, this is a great option if you're looking for something with a lot of bass in a very small, durable, but still surprisingly sleek package. Again, click on the link down below and take advantage of the Prime Day 15% off discount. You get a 1-year warranty and a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. So first, let's talk about what makes this speaker so special, and that's the RAD, the Repel Attract driver. Basically, this is a downward-firing subwoofer, but it has an array of proprietary magnets that cancels out internal air pressure forces when you're playing music. Basically, this allows this small subwoofer to move a lot more air than other similarly sized subwoofers from other brands, and the more air you manage to move, the more bass you have. And since this is a downward-firing subwoofer, your bass is going to be amplified even more because it's always going to have a tabletop to bounce off of. And I also really like that Brane added these super thick rubber feet. So even if you have the bass set to high and you're playing at max volume, the Brane X isn't going to be bouncing all around on the table. The Brane X also has dual front firing tweeters, and it has a dual front firing mid-range drivers which are angled out a little bit, which helps gives this small speaker better room filling sound. But then we have the JBL Boombox 3, which has a built-in subwoofer. However, this subwoofer is much larger and it's front firing. It also has dual front firing mid-range drivers with dual tweeters, which are stacked on top of the drivers, and it has a dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. And then there's the Sony ULT Field 7, which has dual front firing woofers, dual front firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides, and this is a much more common speaker setup. Now, with all of these speakers, you can go in and adjust their EQ to your liking. With the Brane X, you can go into its app and you can adjust its 5-band EQ, but it also has a dedicated bass level, low, medium, and high. And I also really like that you can cycle between these bass levels directly from the speaker itself. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. Now we're going to be using all of these speakers while they're unplugged. The JBL Boombox 3 is playing with its stock JBL sound signature. The Sony ULT Field 7 is playing while it's in ULT 2, which is my preferred setting, and we're going to be using the Brane X with its bass set to low and high. Now, the JBL and Sony are going to be playing at 75% volume, and the Brane X is going to be playing at 85% volume, and for the best experience, you do want to use headphones here.
How could I know it would be goodbye, my love? When did the closer forever come, my love? All I recall was a stare that was vacant and cold. Where did the spark go, the warmth that once stole my soul?
So first, I think we need to address max volume performance. Now in this sound test, the Brane X was playing at 85% volume, whereas these two larger speakers were playing at 75% volume. Now the Brane X has more kick in its bass than these other two speakers, which is genuinely very impressive. However, these other two speakers do get a little louder. Nonetheless, the Brane X still gets impressively loud for its size, and I feel that all of these speakers are good for like a 15-person party. Now, even though these larger speakers get louder than the Brane X, the Brane X still does a phenomenal job of keeping up. And also with both the JBL Boombox 3 and Sony ULT Field 7, if you were to use these speakers while they're plugged in, you are going to get a performance boost out of them. They're going to get louder and they're going to have a little bit more bass. Now, with the Brane X, you don't get a performance boost when it's plugged in, but nonetheless, the Brane X still manages to keep up very well with both the JBL Boombox 3 and Sony ULT Field 7, even when they're plugged in. So, long story short, the max volume performance of the Brane X is very impressive for its size. I feel that it's good for like a 15-person party, and the Brane X does a phenomenal job of keeping up with both the JBL Boombox 3 and Sony ULT Field 7, even though they're 3 times as big and even when they're plugged in. But then there's sound quality. Even though the Brane X is significantly smaller than these other two speakers, instrument separation is up there with both the JBL Boombox 3 and the Sony ULT Field 7. And in general, the Brane X manages to sound as open as these other two speakers. But what really makes the Brane X special here is the bass. Thanks to its downward firing rad, the Brane X just has a lot more resonance and kick in its bass than these other two larger speakers. Now, like we mentioned earlier, the JBL Boombox 3 also has a built-in subwoofer, similar to the Brane X. However, the subwoofer on the Boombox 3 is larger, it doesn't have Brane's proprietary tech, and it isn't downward firing. And as a result, the Boombox 3's subwoofer is only going to go as low as 46.2 Hz, and it only covers 35% of the sub-bass range. Whereas the Brane X is able to go as low as 27.1 Hz, and it covers 82% of the sub-bass range, which means you feel the bass from the Brane X in your chest a lot more, and the bass from the Brane X rattles the walls and moves your furniture a lot more than the bass found on the Boombox 3, all while being a third of the size. So simply put, the Brane X is a phenomenal speaker to consider if you're a bass head. With the Brane X, you're going to have more resonance and more kick in your bass than either the JBL Boombox 3 or Sony ULT Field 7, but in a JBL Extreme 4 or Sony ULT Field 5 size package. Now, yes, the Brane X does lean towards a warmer sound signature because of all of its bass, but it doesn't sound shallow or hollow because the Brane X still offers a strong and defined mids and highs to cut through all of the bass. And it also has similar instrument separation and openness as these larger speakers. But nonetheless, I think the Brane X is super impressive because the bass that's coming out of this speaker is starting to enter small box speaker territory, like the JBL Party Box Encore 2. But do you want to know what's crazier than one Brane X? Two Brane X's. Specifically, you can pair up to 8 Brane X's together if they're all connected to the same Wi-Fi network, and you can either get them to all play in sync, or you can also get them to play in left and right stereo mode. And I personally really like that you can choose which speaker plays which channel, and hypothetically speaking, you can even get a 3-channel setup because you can have one for your center channel, one for your left channel, and the other for your right channel. But now we're going to go ahead and jump into another sound test so that you can hear what these speakers sound like while they're in left and right stereo mode. So, like you may have just heard, if you have two speakers playing together, then your music is going to be louder, it's going to sound more open, and you're gonna have more bass. But again, what's really impressive here is the bass. These two small speakers put out almost as much kick and as much resonance in their bass as, let's say, a small box speaker like the super popular JBL Boombox 120. So again, the bass that's coming out of the Brane X is a defining characteristic of the speaker because it puts out so much bass in such a small package. The only thing is, if you want your Brane speakers to play in sync or in left and right stereo mode, they have to be connected over Wi-Fi because this doesn't work over Bluetooth. Now, the Brane X isn't just a great speaker for at-home use, it's also a great speaker to take on the go with you, and you can either use it indoors or you can even take it out to the lake or even on a boat, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, the Brane X has a built-in battery with an advertised battery life of 12 hours, and that's with the speaker playing at 70% volume and with the bass set to medium. And personally, I think 70% volume on this speaker is a good listening volume for when you're hanging out with like 10 friends. Now, obviously, if you were to use this speaker at a higher volume or with the bass set to high, then that's going to drain your battery life faster. Or you can always extend your battery life by setting the speaker's bass to low, which compared to a lot of other speakers out there is still a lot. Now, the Brane X does charge via a DC port, and it does have an external power brick that you have to worry about, and this is one of the trade-offs that you have to make for the Brane X's compact size. But more importantly, you can leave the Brane X plugged in all of the time while you have it at home, because the speaker will limit your charge to 90% and then shut off, so this way you don't have to worry about your battery getting dry if you leave it plugged in for too long. But more importantly, when you need to take your speaker on the go with you, it's going to be ready with a full charge. And like I mentioned multiple times already, the Brane X is surprisingly small for the bass it puts out. The Brane X weighs in at 7.7 pounds and it has a built-in carrying handle, very similar in size to, let's say, the JBL Extreme 4 or the Sony ULT Field 5. Whereas the JBL Boombox 3 weighs in at 14.8 pounds and the Sony ULT Field 7 weighs in at 13.9 pounds, and these speakers are like 3 times as big. But just like all of these other speakers, the Brane X is very durable because it has a mostly fabric wrap body, so bumps and scrapes aren't going to be an issue for the speaker, and it is rocking an IP57 rating, so it's dustproof and waterproof. And finally, there's connectivity. The Brane X is using Bluetooth 5.1, so it can be connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. Latency is not an issue for the speaker, so you can use it to watch videos with on your phone. But also, the Brane X has AirPlay 2 support, so if you're an Apple user, as long as you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the speaker, you can always stream music to it, and you can also have your Brane X play in sync with any of your other AirPlay 2 speakers, as long as they're all connected to the same Wi-Fi network. The Brane X also has a 3.5mm audio jack, so you can use it with a wired connection. But also, the Brane X has a special soundbar mode, which is going to lower the latency on this audio jack input. So if you want, you can use it as a 2.1 stereo soundbar with your TV. And the Brane X has more than enough bass for watching movies. Or you can even plug in an instrument if you want. But in order to do this, you are going to have to get some third-party adapters, which Brane does have some recommendations. But seriously, the Brane X can be a suitable substitute for a soundbar just because of the sheer amount of bass that it puts out. With the Brane X, you're still going to be able to feel what's happening on the screen, like with a mid-size soundbar, like with, let's say, the Bose Smart Soundbar or the Sonos Beam Gen 2. And finally, if you want, you can also use this speaker as a smart speaker because it has support for Alexa and it has a total of 4 mics so that it can pick up your voice. But with all that being said, the Brane X is a truly very impressive speaker. Thanks to its new and proprietary Repel Attract driver, aka RAD, the Brane X puts out a lot more bass than you'd expect or you'd even think is possible in such a small and sleek form factor. Honestly, I think it's a shame that I didn't record my first reactions when I first turned on the speaker because I was shocked. The Brane X gets almost as loud as either the JBL Boombox 3 or the Sony ULT Field 5'7", but has more bass and it's 1/3 the size. But also, the Brane X isn't just bass, it still has good instrument separation and it sounds very open. Plus, it's super portable because of its small size and its lightweight, and it's super durable because of its fabric wrap body and IP57 rating. And its advertised battery life of 12 hours is with it playing at 70% volume and with its bass set to medium, which is way more than enough for a medium-sized crowd. Overall, I'm very impressed by Brane, and I can't wait to see what else they do with their rad technology. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.